Welcome back, and thanks for joining us once again. We're continuing to study through the Bible, looking at the heroes of the faith. We looked last week at Miriam, the sister of Moses, and saw how that she, like Moses, was brought up in a godly, faithful house, and as such, she became one of the heroines of the faith. Today we're going to be looking at Moses himself. We know the story of Moses, how that an evil Pharaoh had risen up and ordered all the male babies of the Israelites to be thrown into the River Nile. His parents refused to kill this baby, but let him down in a basket until, by the providence of God, he found himself with Pharaoh's daughter, and he was raised up as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. But again, we see the hand of God, and how through Miriam and her faithfulness, Moses ended up being raised by the nursemaid who was actually his biological mother. And he too grew up with a faithful attitude. We read through in the book of Exodus how Moses was raised up in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. But there came a time when he decided he wanted to follow the one God rather than stay in the luxurious living of the Egyptians. Notice what we read in the book of Hebrews in chapter 11, starting in verse 24. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to endure ill treatment with the people of God rather than enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. Moses left Egypt and spent 40 years living in the wilderness of Sinai. And it was there at one occasion when he was out pasturing the flocks, he was on Mount Horeb, the mountain of the Lord, when he saw this incredible sight. In the distance, he saw a bush burning. Now, in the desert environment that he lived in, I'm sure that there were a number of fires that came out, but this bush was different. This bush that he saw was burning, but it was not consumed. So he drew near it. And notice what we read as he draws near it, and we see his response there. And we read, this passage is found in Exodus chapter 3, and we start in verse 3. And there we read, so Moses said, I must turn aside now and see this marvelous sight, why the bush is not burning up. When he looked and saw that, when the Lord saw that he had turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, here I am. And then he said, do not come near here. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. And he also said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. What a wonderful, wonderful occasion this was for Moses. And we see this is the start of a whole new chapter in Moses' life. As we go on down, we read in verses 9 and 10. Now behold, this is God. Now behold, the cry of the sons of Israel has come to me. Furthermore, I have seen the oppression with which the Egyptians have oppressed them. Therefore come now, and I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. The one who had left Egypt, and that wicked Pharaoh, was ordered 40 years later to go back into Egypt and free the children of Israel. And through the power of God, this prophet of God, this Moses, this hero of the faith, did just that. He stood before Pharaoh, not fearing the punishment that he might get from Pharaoh, but fearing and honoring and obeying God. And God brought on the nation of Israel 10 plagues, each one worse than the previous. And it wasn't until after the last that God allowed Moses to take the children of Israel out. And they left the land of Egypt and headed towards the Red Sea. But the Bible tells us that that Pharaoh had a change of heart, and he sought to go after the children of Israel and bring them back in captivity once again. And the people were afeared. They were worried about what was happening, going to happen to them. But notice what we read in Exodus chapter 14, starting in verse 13 this time. But Moses said to the people, "Do not fear. Stand by and see the salvation of the Lord, which he has accomplished for you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, you will never see them again forever. The Lord will fight for you while you keep silent." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the sons of Israel to go forward. As for you, lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. And the sons of Israel shall go through the midst of the sea on dry land." And that is just what Moses did. He raised up his staff and the Red Sea parted, and the children of Israel walked through on dry land. But when Pharaoh and his armies attempted to do that, the waters crashed in on them and drowned them all. We notice again in Hebrews chapter 11 what the Hebrew writer says about this. Hebrews 11 starting in 29. By faith they passed through the Red Sea as though they were passing through dry land. And the Egyptians, when they attempted it, were drowned. By faith. This is a sign of the heroes of faith. All through this chapter, Hebrews chapter 11, we read of these men and women of faith doing the things that God had commanded them. That really is a definition of faith. Believing God and obeying him. We too can be added to the annals of the heroes of faith today. It's not good enough just to read the Bible. It's not good enough just to believe in God. It's not good enough just to believe in what he says. We have to do all those things, but we have to follow through, and we've got to do what God says. God is God, and so we have to be obedient to him. Well, our time is up now, and I thank you once again for being with us. Look for us next week. We'll be doing another video, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, and goodbye for now.